Andor is back. The first 3 episodes are out, and the series hasn't missed a beat. Obviously, there are some differences to Season 1, but the tone, pacing, and depth of the show all feel perfectly in line with what we've come to know and love about this series. And if Season 2 follows a similar trajectory, where each arc builds in intensity until we reach a huge boiling point, these 3 episodes are already a strong start. I don't want to waste any time because we've got a lot to talk about, so let's dive in. Even though we had just done a rewatch of Season 1, hearing that opening theme music again got me pumped up. It's so short and simple, but it puts me in the perfect mood for this show. And then the use of the Ferrix anvil to suggest the passing of time was an inspired choice. We open up on the planet Sienar, which is new to Star Wars. Sienar Fleet Systems has always been the company that manufactured the TIE Fighter line, and they were owned by the Sienar family, but now we know they've apparently got their own planet. I assume this is kinda like a Sereno situation, where the planet was named after the family. We see a technician checking out what looks like a TIE Avenger from Star Wars Legends. We never hear it called by name, but the Avenger was designed to be a better fighter against Rebel ships. They were faster than TIE Interceptors and had shields and a hyperdrive, which was rare for the other TIE models, and Cassian is there disguised as a test pilot to steal it. I will say that something the series has often done is tell us the bare minimum. On the one hand, I think it makes for very efficient storytelling that lets us dig deeper on our own, but on the other, I wouldn't have minded hearing why this mission was so important. Does stealing the TIE Avenger mean the Empire can't send it to mass reproduction? It's not vital that we know. The TIE heist is more of a backdrop for this arc. It's not the point of the episodes, but I still just like knowing things. That said, I can make my own headcanon about those questions, because I'm glad Andor spends more time on scenes like the one between Cassian and Nia. It highlights where his head is at now, 1 year later. He's able to comfort Nia, because he knows exactly what she's going through. He once had a fire to fight the Empire, and he nearly let it go out for years, but in Season 1 we saw it rekindled. We saw him come home to himself as he tells her she is doing by deciding to do her part in this struggle. But I also see in him an ability to build trust. Nia says she was told not to look at Cassian or ask about him, but she keeps breaking those rules because she's scared. Cassian tells her it's okay and encourages her to see him. I have to assume all those rules came from Luthen or Clea because they very much operate out of secrecy and distrust. But we're gonna later see how this lack of trust is affecting the growing rebellion. One of the themes of this arc might as well be the same from the Clone Wars episode Weapons Factory. The first step toward loyalty is trust. This was a great, quiet scene that gets us back into Cassian's head, but also directly sets up what I think will be basically a character arc for the Rebel Alliance this season. But hey, Andor is a show that not only executes those quiet moments, but also delivers on fantastic action sequences, and the Avenger heist was so much fun. Cassian accidentally sending the ship into reverse was great. It kinda reminded me of that moment in Independence Day. We get to see him use all the weapons and slowly learn to fly the thing, and the holographic heads-up display is so awesome. And does it have like a tiny Death Star beam mounted under the cockpit? And then there's an awesome chase sequence through a canyon, and some TIE Advanced V1s are his pursuers. That's a great detail because it makes sense that the planet Sienar would have other prototype TIEs ready to go, and they were introduced in Star Wars Rebels at about the same part of the timeline. Just awesome stuff. What a way to kick off the season. The next scene is about Bix and Brasso and company on Mina Rao, but I'm gonna jump straight to Chandrila and just stick with that storyline so I'm not jumping around so much. First of all, I love seeing Chandrila in live action. It's a world usually talked about but rarely seen, and even then it's mostly in books and comics. And these sets for the Mothma estate are wild, just like Ferrix from Season 1. Look, I'm not anti-volume. I think it's an awesome tool, but it has limitations, and you simply can't do long oneers on it the same way you can on a real set. And this sets the tone for the wedding so well. You see Mon putting on her pleasant act, dealing with problems with a smile, bumping into Vel and Erskine, a character from Star Wars Rebels, by the way, that's fun. But then we just see her reaction to something, and I knew she had just seen Luthen arrive, which was a great bit of acting. But then we follow her around this huge set, she runs into Tay where he begins to set up his drama, and finally Luthen and Skolden, and the whole while Genevieve O'Reilly is swapping between smiles and anxiety. It's so good, and I'm sure there's some digital trickery involved, but just moving a camera around a set for a long period of time is one of the touches I think really elevates Andor as a series. As usual, Mothma and Luthen are basically talking in a fun code, trying to give or get vital information in broad daylight. These are the kinds of scenes I live for in this show, like in Season 1, Mothma walking around with Tay reminding him to smile. Now we get to see Luthen all smiles and pulling information out of unsuspecting naval officers. It's awesome, and part of the reason I think all the wedding stuff was my favorite part of these 3 episodes. But this time around, it's Tay who has money troubles, and he wants to whine about it. He's losing money, his wife moved out. I'll talk about all that in the 2nd episode when he divulges more. I did not expect this storyline from him, but I do love it. Popping over to Mina Rao, now it's time to catch up with Bix, who is having nightmares about Dr. Gorst, which makes perfect sense. She was not looking great when she left Ferrix, and it doesn't surprise me at all that it's still affecting her. But she also seems to have recovered fairly well, making jokes with Willman and working on machinery. It's established that they're refugees hiding out on this world without a visa, which... Look, I know Tony Gilroy is insisting that Andor is meant to be timeless, and I know that refugees are unfortunately a timeless problem. Not to mention, all of this was written and shot before the most recent election and all that bullshit that's happened since, but still, this Mina Rao storyline feels so timely, because the Empire shows up and of course sparks terror in all of our Ferrix characters. In my trailer breakdowns, I was wondering what the Empire was doing. Are they hunting for Bix and the others? Are they invading the planet? And it's nothing that serious. They've simply come for a boring audit, an imperial supply census. But their mere presence is enough to spark terror, because they're going to find people who are, yes, on the planet illegally without a visa, but those people are also welcome parts of the community, even vital parts of the community. I'm jumping ahead to episode 2 a bit, but the citizens of Mina Rao say themselves they need the help of undocumented workers to help make all the grain that will go on to feed the galaxy. It's just like what's going on in America, and not just the past few months, although it certainly seemed worse as of late, but undocumented workers help keep so many industries going, and yet all too many people will call them all criminals or leeches or have the gall to call them lazy. And I'm not saying there are no violent criminals who are undocumented in America. There certainly are. But the people in power seem to want to paint that entire group with the same brush, which seems ridiculous, except for the fact that it often works. To quote The Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire by Dr. Chris Kimshall, the Empire did not need to convince many people to embrace its ideology, it just had to validate the prejudices they already held and grant them permission to act on them. While I'm speaking from the American experience here, I know this is an issue around the world. My point is that there are refugees who have fled terrible circumstances who just want to rebuild their lives and find some semblance of peace, but they can't because they have to live their lives in fear even over the most basic, boring events. And I know this is a complex issue, and there are matters of taxation, infrastructure, housing, and a ton of other things to consider, but while those things are considered, shouldn't we be treating those people with compassion rather than disdain? Shouldn't we be looking to help instead of looking for a reason to give people the boot the first chance we get? Shouldn't we remember what's inscribed on the Statue of Liberty? Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, the tempest-tossed to me. Now let's do a quick check-in with the villains, our Imperial characters, at a place called the Malthine Divide. I don't know if that's a planet or the name of this mountain range. I'm still kind of hopeful that this is on Eriadu, but it seems unlikely Krennic would be holding a meeting Tarkin doesn't know about on Tarkin's homeworld. Anyway, Krennic is here, and he wants to tell us all about Gorman. I'm so glad he's back right in the first episode, and I love all his pomp and importance, acting like this is the most important meeting the Empire has ever held, right before playing a cheesy tourism video about Gorman culture and fashion. I call it cheesy, but I love it, because it highlights what makes the planet unique, what they take pride in, and what they provide to the galaxy. But the Empire doesn't care about any of that. The planet has a resource needed by the Death Star. The Empire's energy project. That's a great connection back to the novel Catalyst, which sets up how Galen Erso's research into renewable energy was twisted into creating a superweapon. I love that Krennic says access to unlimited power would transform the economy and solidify authority. First, I see what you did there. More importantly, we know Krennic is talking about the so-called stability the Death Star would bring. But what if the Empire did genuinely want to provide unlimited energy to the galaxy in a benevolent way? I would like to think they would get the same effect, but the Empire just doesn't understand anything outside of their desire to dominate and control. They see research that could easily be used for good, and they instead wonder how they could use it for destruction. and they see Gorman, a planet full of people creating fashion and beauty for the galaxy, and the only thing they want to figure out is how to destroy that world for their own purposes. Part of that discussion involves the Ministry of Enlightenment, which is a hilariously bleak name for the propaganda machine, a reminder of how willing the government is to create a so-called enemy out of thin air, to just make up a story and run with it. Although these guys do seem to be a little more elegant than the real world, at least they're not claiming Gormans are coming to eat your pets. Dedra's proposed solution builds off of that. She suggests infiltrating the Gorman resistance so they can guide the actions of rebels on the ground, which is a good idea, very Imperial. The Emperor welcomed pockets of resistance early on because he could continue to point to those insurgents and say, see, the Clone Wars might be over, but we still need a strong military to protect us. Rebel cells allowed him to continue solidifying power and military might. He made his citizens fear anyone and everyone who fought back when the Empire stuck a boot on their neck. Infiltrating Gorman rebels to make them a scapegoat will make the Empire seem justified in their actions to the rest of the galaxy. Now let's return to Cassian to wrap up the first episode as he lands the stolen tie on some unknown jungle world. Unknown for now, at least. But his contact is missing and a bunch of disorganized rebels surround him and threaten him, arguing the entire time while they do it, which I thought was quite funny. But these rebels apparently got stranded in the jungle, ran into Cassian's contact, and wound up killing him. And now they might kill Cassian, even though they're all rebels. They don't trust Cassian because, well, yeah, he is wearing an Imperial uniform, but he also won't say what rebel group he's with, because Luthen is the most secretive man alive. This all goes back to trust and loyalty. The rebels at this moment are not an alliance of any kind. They're divided and hungry, they're rudderless, without a clear leader, and neither group trusts the others to come back for them if they escape. The infighting gets so bad they start to kill one another and they split into tribes. This small group is a symbol for all the scattered, struggling cells across the galaxy. They're fighting amongst themselves and killing each other while there are literal monsters lurking in the shadows. They kill their pilot, making Cassian even more important, and so the first episode ends. When it was announced the second season would be airing 3 episodes at once, I was a little sad that we wouldn't get to savor the last bit of Andor for 12 weeks. I am still sad this will all be over so quickly, but like many episodes from Season 1, this was an abrupt ending, and I'm glad we're able to finish this arc in full. It does feel good to have a complete story every week, so let's just keep going and complete this review. And again, I'm gonna try to consolidate storylines as best I can so this video doesn't bounce around too much. On Coruscant, Dedra is forced to take the Gorman Project. I like all the layers of this appearing to be a demotion and a slap on the wrist for the catastrophe on Ferrix and her lack of results finding Axis. She's instructed to pretend as if it's a demotion, when in reality it's a chance for her to regain some status. With all the time jumps, I was wondering if we would be sweeping some of the consequences of Season 1 under the rug, but between this and Bix's PTSD, I think we're following up on things sufficiently. Speaking of, let's talk about Cyril Karn's big return since he sat out all of Episode 1. He's now giving the speech to new members of the Bureau of Standards, so he's moving up in the world, and he explains exactly how he got there. Basically through the same tenacity that got him fired from Preox Morlana, and he seems very proud of himself and the work he's doing. We're basically seeing that he hasn't changed a bit. He's still self-important and solely concerned with protecting the interests of the Empire. Back at his home, we find out that he and Dedra are in fact together, and this is a storyline that makes me grateful for the 1-year time jump. I'm fine skipping the early days of their weird relationship. I am perfectly happy to buy that they are now together and it's probably dysfunctional. You can spare me those details. On Chandrilla, tension keeps on climbing since Luthen can't get in contact with anyone, so Clea opts to return home. Meanwhile, Perrin takes jabs at Mon about her so-called boyfriend Tay getting too drunk at the first night of festivities. The slow build of his whole deal and how threatening he has inadvertently become was fantastic. That was probably my favorite element of my favorite storyline in these 3 episodes. Later, the wedding party takes a hike up a giant mountain as part of their tradition, some ceremony where they will be purified. But Mon and Vel talk about Cinta and how, yes, there is important work to be done against the Empire, but Mon says we have to live to be able to do it. And not just survive, but live. Cinta was definitely painted as a character who was all about the mission. Vel always came second, and I can understand why. Her entire family was killed by stormtroopers. But I think that's the internal struggle of fighting oppression. So much of Star Wars is about about how to fight without losing yourself. Saw Gerrera is a classic case of someone who is fighting on the right side, but completely loses who he was after the death of his sister. I think part of the danger is the loss of love, be that romantic or platonic or familial or even a general love of humanity. If you lose what you're fighting for, you can lose yourself. And I think another aspect of staying true to yourself is remembering to find joy, remembering to live when you can. And this comes back in Perrin's speech later, because he is what happens when you let that go too far. He just wants to have fun all the time, and he questions Mon on why everything has to be so sad. He speaks of the virtue of pleasure, gaiety, and amusement, and he reminds Lita to find joy beneath the cloud of anxieties that life will throw your way. He encourages her to seek out joy in the small things. And it's heartbreaking that the worst person we know has made what I think is a good point. Yes, you do have to find joy and embrace it when it comes, especially when things are hard. But if that becomes all you do, if you're just rooting around for amusement and pleasure while surrounded by the pain and suffering of others, that's selfish, that's greed, that is the root of the dark side. Perrin's no Sith, but he buddies up to people like Sly Moore and Ars Dangor, who are Sith acolytes. They fully know who Palpatine really is, and Perrin calls them fun. The quick and easy path is to follow Perrin, stop caring about others, and just find joy for yourself. The hard thing to do is strike the right balance where you're taking care of yourself so you can take care of others as well. To close out the wedding stuff, Mon's scene with Tay was fantastic. Their scenes are always bangers, and I absolutely think we are meant to be reminded of their big conversation back in Season 1. Because back then, Tay was all high and mighty about how his politics might be too strong for Mothma, and she had to blow his mind with everything she was doing, and then he agreed to help. But now all of a sudden, rebel activity over the past year has hurt him financially. His politics don't seem to be all that strong now that it's become inconvenient to him, and he was never promised anything. He was just helping out a friend in a tight spot. But Mon got what she wanted, and Skolden got what he wanted, and he's at this extravagant party with all these rich people, and he starts whining. He's drinking and talking about all this stuff openly, basically blackmailing Mon, all the while Luthen is watching. I instantly knew where that was gonna lead. I loved this scene because while I didn't expect it for Tay, I can understand it. I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. Over on Mina Rao, the Empire's audit closes in on Bix, Brasso, and Willman, but mostly Bix. Hasn't she been through enough? She has been tortured, and she's having nightmares, and now she's got to deal with this obvious Imperial sexual predator. Everything that dude did made my skin crawl. He's all smiles and politeness on the surface, but he just keeps digging and pushing, and you can see exactly what he's after. Finally, on the supposedly unknown jungle world, the two groups of rebels look for their dead in the grass. They only find what the animals left behind, continuing to set up that danger. In the morning, both groups struggle to find food while they starve. They're in two separate camps, but they're facing the exact same problems. They could be solving them together, but instead they're fighting. And then we see the group with the TIE fighters starting to aim the guns at their enemies. To me, that reminds me of what's coming and what the rebels are truly up against. Because remember, the Avenger has like a tiny little super laser on it. I would argue that this whole conflict on this moon is a micro version of the larger story of Rogue One and A New Hope. The rebellion is leaderless and scattered and floundering, and while they struggle to unite, the Death Star is being slowly built. They need to become an alliance before it's finished. And this group finally attempts to come together when the sun sets. They drop their weapons and decide to settle this like adults by playing rock, paper, scissors. Which on the one hand is at least something, but on the other, you're playing games in the dark while there are literal monsters actively hunting you. This is your plan? You're just gonna hold up cute little signs at the State of the Union? This is too little too late, and you let the sun go down already. The monsters are here, and they don't care. While they all get torn apart, Cassian escapes, takes the TIE Avenger, and flies away to reveal that we have been on Yavin 4 the whole time. That was such a sick reveal, and not just as an Easter egg or reference, but because these rebels were literally so close. There is no rebel base at the Massassi temples yet, but metaphorically, this little micro-rebellion got to the point where they were going to unify and choose a leader, even if it was in a silly way. They were gonna cooperate, but like I said, it was too late. The clock ran out because they fought for too long. The sun went down and destruction found them. The rebels who are still out in the galaxy are facing the same problem. They need a leader to unite them, and of course we know that will be Mon Mothma, and I can't wait to see the rest of her journey. That'll be in the arcs to come, but we've still got one more episode to cover today, so let's press on. Back on Coruscant, Dedra meets Cyril's mother, and I'm surprised at how much I missed Edie. I mean, she is terrible, but she's fun to watch, and I like that even Dedra is nervous to meet her. It's also kinda hilarious seeing her try to fake a smile. But I mostly love that we are finally seeing Edie with someone besides Cyril. She's always talking about how much she loves Coruscant, and she puts on this appearance of being part of high society, but she eats her dessert with the elegance of a toddler, and we find out that her big-time family connection, Uncle Harlow, is someone with a criminal record. She wields her power over Cyril because that's the only power she has, and then Dedra takes it away and puts Edie in her place while Cyril collapses on the bed, which was such a great cut. He is so pathetic. Mon Mothma shares a final moment with her daughter before she gets married, which seems an awful lot like a goodbye. She makes a final plea to Lita not to go through with the wedding, but this is what she wants. People have been wondering what would become of her and Perrin once Mothma starts leading the Rebel Alliance, but I kinda think this'll help keep Lita safe. She's joined another family and made her disdain for her mother pretty clear. After the ceremony, Davos Skolden gives the newlyweds a gift of an ancient, incredibly valuable statue that was stolen 25,000 years earlier by the Rakatan invaders. That's a fun connection that was also mentioned back in Season 1, but now we have a timeline, and it does match up with the existence of the Rakatan Infinite Empire from Star Wars Legends. But for this story, it's just a symbol of Skolden's wealth and a temptation for Tay Kolma, who is getting drunk again, which Luthen easily recognizes. Tay sees Skolden's bluster and sings his praises to Mon while the scumbag happily chats up Imperials, which of course sets off her alarm bells. Her chat with Luthen was awesome, talking about killing Tay without saying it. That line from Luthen when she says she doesn't understand, "How nice for you," that was rad. All this tension building up with Niamos playing, and also cutting back and forth with the Mina Rao stuff was incredible. This series has always used music, or chanting, or even the simple percussion of Ferrix so well. And we see Mon cut loose, taking shots, drowning her sorrows. Her marriage has been dead for a long time. She's basically lost her daughter to this marriage. She's about to lose a childhood friend, and she's losing a piece of herself by letting it happen. Dance it out, Mon. Meanwhile, we see Tay getting picked up by Cinta, and I love that she is treated as like this angel of death. You just see her and you know what's about to happen to him. Finally, let's get back to the title characters part of the episode. He learns that the Empire arrived on Mina Rao and drops everything to go save his friends. Brasso gets some help to go off on a fake job before the Imperials reach them, but of course they arrive early. And of course Will is gone saying goodbye to his girlfriend, so Brasso heads off to get him and gets captured. And of course the real reason the Empire is early is because of that awful lieutenant. He knows Bix is there illegally, and he uses that to try to force her into sex, which I knew that's what he was after in episode 2, but I was still not expecting to see an attempted rape scene in Star Wars. But that gets to the core of the Empire and fascism. Imperials aren't around to enforce the law, they're there to use the law to their benefit. The rules do not apply to them in their eyes. To directly quote The Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire again, the laws existed to serve the Empire, not protect the citizenry. For all their talk about law and order, Imperials bring chaos with them wherever they go, because they don't think the rules apply to them. Thankfully, Bix kills the lieutenant and Willman returns to help take out the driver, calling away a bunch of troopers from Brasso. And Cassian finally arrives to easily blow up that trooper carrier, and then Brasso attempts to make a run for it. Cassian kills the rest of the troopers, but he's too late. Brasso's been hit and unceremoniously dies off screen, which infuriates me. I loved that giant brick-wielding man, and for him to die like this feels so empty. He ran off to help Willman, who escaped all on his own, and was just gunned down for something so pointless. And this is not me complaining about the writing or anything, it upsets me, but it's meant to. And I think it is supposed to feel empty. It feels like Brasso died for nothing, and Cassian sees that. And we know he's gonna eventually die as well, but as Luthen suggested in Season 1, he'll be giving it all for something real. I also don't think Brasso died for nothing or died in vain. He is part of Cassian's journey, and at this point, anyone who ever affected his life helped save the galaxy. Nimic, Marva, Kino Loy, and now Brasso. All these people that helped Cassian become that person that joins Jyn on the Scarif mission. All this death and sacrifice in the build-up to Rogue One, and then all the death on Scarif itself. So many people gave their lives to get to this point where Luke Skywalker could make an impossible shot against all odds. Obviously, that's the moment galactic historians would talk about, and the moment Star Wars fans will remember as the big push back against the Empire. But like Nimmick said, even the smallest act of insurrection pushes our lines forward. All that said, it still hurts. I'm gonna miss Brasso, and also they all left B2 Emo down there. I mean, I'm glad he's safe, but he's also gonna be very sad. He just wants to hang out with Cassian, and he never gets to. That bums me out, but I just keep telling myself at least he's safe. But there we go. We've reached the end of the first chapter of Andor Season 2. It's off to a fantastic start as far as I'm concerned. It felt very much like watching the first 3 episodes of Season 1. Tension building and then exploding. If the next 3 arcs keep the same pattern as Season 1, getting more and more intense, and this was the starting point, I think we're in for a crazy ride. But I've talked for long enough, so I'm gonna wrap up. Let me know what you thought of these episodes in the comments. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel to keep up with all our Andor coverage, follow us on our socials, and consider checking out our Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.